Hey guys, I'm Drago and I finally bit the bullet and I made myself a TikTok account. I am probably like never going to post on there in all honesty, and I'm probably also going to barely use it because I have more of a habit of scrolling on YouTube shorts.
Skip it up and down.
But the reason I made an account was because I was watching a lot of videos lately about art hacks. You know, when people say, let's make this silly tool out of, I don't know, blue tack and a paintbrush, and it's for some reason meant to make you make really smooth lines when you paint or something. You know, that sort of silly thing that you can find? Well, I thought, what can you find for digital art? What hacks are there for digital artists? And what better place to look for crazy art hacks than on TikTok, probably the craziest social media out there. Now, it is actually surprisingly hard to find digital art hacks. The most I could find usually were tips and tricks rather than actual hacks. But I think I found a few that I thought were quite cool and I decided to test out in this video. So if you like this kind of video where I find art hacks and tips and I test them out for you guys to see, mostly on the digital side of things, then make sure to leave a like to register your interest so I know if you guys want more, and let's get on with it. Okay, here we are on TikTok, and who the hell is this? I'm just going to go up here and I'm going to search for digital art hacks, and we are going to have a scroll through and we are going to see what we can find.
You have this cute paper texture on your drawing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
First have your drawing.
Make sure every part of the drawing is separate.
Right, separate layers.
You need a blank texture paper, so I just googled one and saved it.
Yeah, quite
Have the
simple so
texture
far.
on top of the part where you want it to be. Now clip it to the layer below. On the same texture layer,
Clip and mask.
go to blending mode and put multiple.
Oh,
It will look like this.
that's actually really
Then just
simple for
merge
such a
down
nice effect.
the texture layer to the layer you clip it to.
Oh wow.
Repeat the step for the rest of the layers. Don't merge all the layers together. Once all the part has the texture, go to FX and add the drop shadow FX. Add the shadow
Oh,
type.
so in
of your
each part add a
choice.
drop shadow to make it look like it's different layers of paper.
Now repeat the step for the rest of the parts.
Oh
And
my
you're done.
god.
Sorry if this tutorial is horrible.
That
But
is
I
so
hope it
simple
helped.
for something so effective. Oh, I've got to try that one, definitely. I just made a quick cartoony head of Freddy here, separated into different layers like TikTok said to use for this one. And after fiddling them around for a while, I had a stupid old cartoon Freddy head that didn't look very good, but it was good enough. And then I popped onto Google and I grabbed this random paper texture stock image. And I did exactly what the TikTok said. I put them on multiply, I clipped it to the layer below, and then merged. And yeah, this actually looks really, really cute. I like this. If you are looking for a way to maybe digitally make paper puppets or something for animation, puppet animation, this is a great way to do it. This is a really simple, efficient way to add a paper texture. My only complaints would be that the paper texture using a multiply layer doesn't really show up on darker colours. As you can see on Freddy's nose and hat here, you can't really see it at all. And I was trying to fiddle around with blending mode, see which layer blending mode would make it look best, but I just couldn't really get it to show up at any point. But then again, I guess realistically, if you paint a paper with black, you are less likely to see the texture of the paper underneath. Also, adding the drop shadow just added a lot more dimension to it. Unfortunately, my program doesn't have a drop shadow filter, so I just did it quickly manually by hand. But it just adds a nice depth and dimension to the paper layers, makes it look like it is actually a paper puppet that has physically been stuck together with layers. Seriously, this is a really fun, cute little hack, and I highly recommend it.
This is how I cheat at
Whoa,
digital
whoa, whoa,
arts
whoa,
with
whoa,
a
whoa,
method
whoa,
no
wait,
one-
wait, wait. Can we go back a second? Can we just go back a second? Is she sharpening an Apple Pencil? Oh, that makes me cringe. I know that's fake, but that makes me cringe. Oh.
I'm going to teach you a digital painting hack to fill in your lines quickly.
Okay.
What you want to do is make sure that there's no holes in your line work. Once you make sure all your lines are connected, you're going to go over to the magic wand tool and select the outside of your subject so that you see the dancing lines in the bounds of your canvas.
outside,
Make sure
okay.
you get in between every crevice of your subject.
That's
Once you
interesting.
do that, you're going to press Control-I to inverse your
Oh, and then you
selection.
inverse it.
You'll see
I
that as if the
see.
selection might be slightly out of the bounds of your lines. So to prevent messy coloring, you're going to want to go to Select and Modify, Contract. Contract it about 1 to 2 pixels.
Okay. Honestly,
Now
this
create
seems
a
a little bit
layer
more complicated
underneath
than
your
what I
line
normally do.
layer, take a base color and fill in your subject. Press Ctrl-D to deselect everything, and there you have it. You can
okay.
then press Lock Transparency to color within the bounds. Hope this helps.
I'm gonna give this one a go. I feel like that's a little bit more complicated than what I normally do for my colouring. I'll compare the two and see which I think is simpler and which is actually a better hack, so to speak, which makes it easier. This is the first one I came across that I was a little bit skeptical with. I could see its application, but I just really didn't think it was much more of a help than what I usually do. So here I have a line art that I've taken from a piece that I drew a while ago, and I'm demonstrating how I usually colour in my flat base. I just fill in the canvas, I use the magic wand tool, I select around my line art, fill in every crevice. I can use paint tool size selection pen to just fill in the little bits that aren't completely filled in. It takes me no more than a minute to do this every single time, and then just Control X and the colour disappears and I've got my base colour within the lines. And even if you don't have the selection pen available in your program, just going with the eraser, like I said, takes me no longer than a minute or two at a time. This method states that you should select around the outside of your line art first without putting any base colour down, and then invert that selection, and then apparently also erode it down a few pixels so that it goes within all the gaps. I was skeptical, I didn't think this would work very well, and it turns out I was right. Doing exactly what TikTok said, eroding it down a few pixels meant that my colour didn't actually reach the lines properly. I had this white border all the way around it. Now, maybe this is a difference in programs, maybe this is something that Paint Tool Side doesn't do very well, maybe it's also a difference in thickness of line art because I use quite thin line art. But yeah, for me this method just definitely didn't work, and I also felt it's still a lot more steps, a lot more convoluted than it needs to be. Like what I normally do is just base colour, select outside the line art, erase, there you go. This one is select outside the line art, invert it, erode it. There's a lot more steps to it that I just think isn't quite necessary. So yeah, do I recommend this one? Not really. But again, I think this is both down to preference and program differences as well.
How I shade. First of all, I never use black to shade.
Okay, never use black, we know
Drawing
that.
will always look dead at the end. This is the same thing as using white for
Yep, never use black and white.
Thing you
We
shouldn't
got that.
be doing is to only pick a darker or lighter shade of the color.
That's what
you're
I had to
using
learn
render
for quite a
your
while.
There's nothing wrong doing that, but I think it can be better.
Yeah,
So here's what I do.
okay.
Use the round color palette instead of the square.
Yeah.
To shade with the dark colors, first lower your base color to
Okay.
cool colors. And only then you can go down to dark shades. Same thing to add light. First go up to warm colors. You can see the difference.
Yes,
Here is
okay.
an orange.
Can definitely see the difference in that.
You can tell this one tastes better. Let's put this in the trash and have fun. Give away a light in the beginning. Shading is not always
Oh
easy.
god, tell me about it.
How I shade.
Okay, so I always knew from the start never to use black and white for shading, and that hue shifting can actually be quite helpful in this, and this is what they show hue shifting. I'm gonna give that a go. I'm gonna see if I can make two of the same thing and shade them in two different ways and see which looks better. Okay, this one is what I was talking about in the intro. This is probably more of a tip rather than a hack, but what they say is actually really, really important in art. Now, while art is rather subjective and it's down to a lot of preference and what you like to do, what you think looks good, there are some things that are important like colour theory, and there are do's and don'ts with that. And here, the don't is do not shade with black and white. As you can see here, I made the same cloths as in the TikTok because I wanted to mostly expand on this tip. Shading with black and white makes everything look really, really flat. It desaturates your colours, and it just does not look right, frankly. So if you do exactly what TikTok said, where instead you shift your hue in the colour wheel and then go up and down in shade, you could get a much nicer feeling. The colours stay saturated, the shadows and highlights look a lot more natural. It's a much better way of doing it. However, the reason why I want to expand on this tip is that this works for if you are rendering directly onto your original colour. Now, if you are someone like me where you shade using blending modes instead, then I wanted to show you how that can still apply to your blending mode layers. So I usually use opacity layer to shade. Sometimes I will use shade and shine layers instead, depends on what the colours are. But here I wanted to show you how black and white still doesn't look great when you're using a blending layer. It definitely looks better than just going straight on top of the colour, but it still has this sort of flat look. It's a very sort of neutral light, and I guess if you are going for a neutral light, that works. But honestly, it could be so much better. So what I like to do when I'm shading with opacity layers is I think about the colour of the lighting that I want, and then I will choose a dark shade of that colour and a light shade of that colour. So for example, here I'm going for a general sort of neutral blue light. So I have selected a dark blue shade for the dark shadows, and then I select a light blue shade for the highlights. And as you can see in comparison, how much more it keeps the colours in there, and how it does really actually help to represent the colour of your lighting. I can make this red lighting, I can make this green lighting, yellow lighting. That will overlay, surprisingly enough, and it will both keep the base colour and make it clear what colour the cloth is supposed to be, but also make it clear what colour the light source is as well. It just blends it together really nicely. When I switch some layer modes to blending modes that are also commonly used, such as multiply, you can see how the black and white shading again just looks really, really flat and boring. So yeah, if there's anything I'm going to say that is a definitely do not do in art, it is do not shade with black and do not shade with white. I mean, look at the difference in these. You can see why. So do I recommend what that TikTok said? 100% yes, I do.
How did I not know this? Go to Google, type in paint by number,
Okay.
hit printable, find the image that you want,
Okay.
download it to your drawing app, pinwheel the colour, and start your digital paint by number.
Oh my god.
How did I not know
god.
this?
Oh, that's oh. Okay, I've been obsessed with paint by numbers lately, and I mean like the physical ones I've been actually painting. I have one on my desk here right now that I'm halfway through doing. And that, amount of times I want to do some art and I just don't have the motivation or anything to actually sketch something out online at all. This, oh my god, yes, I've got to try this one. How I never thought to do this, I really don't know. I have been absolutely obsessed with paint by numbers lately, those and diamond paintings. I love doing both of them. They are great for me when I am bored, but I want to be creative, but I don't have the motivation to actually draw something from scratch. And so just to have this thing that I can paint or put diamonds onto, and it sort of guides me through it rather than me having to really think about it, it just lets my brain sort of turn off and relax. And that's really helpful for me with my stress issues and stuff that I get a lot. You know, I suffer with anxiety, I suffer with depression, so this sort of thing is really great for me to relax. But at the same time, it needs money to buy them, and I don't always have the money to buy them. So to realise that I could do this digitally, I could just go and download a free template off the internet, and I could just colour it with the tools I've already got. Oh my god, this has blown my mind. Like, it's such a simple thing, but I don't know how I never ever realised this is something you could do. And honestly, if you are bored but you want to be creative, but you don't have the motivation or inspiration, you can't think of what you want to draw, you just can't think of anything, or if you're like me where you're like, you can think of the final piece but you just can't be asked to do the actual sketching or anything, then this is such a great thing to do. You could just grab a template off Google, just like TikTok said, and just colour it in as you wish. And while I was quite rough here, I was quite speedy with it because I didn't want to spend too much time on it, because obviously I had to make this video. You could do so much with this when you're doing it digitally. You could put textures on your brush to make it look like an actual paintbrush. You could put a canvas or paper texture on the canvas itself. And I also found this is a really great way to practice your line control. Obviously everyone always says, you know, colouring inside the lines is a thing you do as a kid. But seriously, even though, like I said, I was being quite rough with this and I wasn't being completely precise with it, I guess it's been a really good way to practice sort of your line control, practice doing curves, practice doing sharp edges and points, and just in general get that control nailed down. So would I recommend this hack? 100% yes, I would. Give this a go. I found it so fun and relaxing to just put a video on in the background and sit down and just paint this in. So much fun, seriously. If you are bored, give this a go.
I will always color like this.
No. I'm sorry, but it's easy.
What? Wait, I've never used a reference. I've never ever used a reference. Okay.
Hope this helps.
Okay. So how they're joined here at first, that is how I've always done it on Procreate, because I can't ever get it to work the same way that I do it in Inside, where I just fill the canvas and then select the outside of the line out and delete. That's never worked in Procreate for me. So this tip, I've always wondered what that reference layer is for. I'm definitely going to try that one, 100%. If this works, this will change my life. Now, I have always sort of hated drawing on Procreate because I've always done the method of just filling in the canvas and then erasing around my lines in order to fill in my base layer, because I could never get the magic wand tool to work. I do line art that's a bit too thin and Procreate just doesn't like to sort of pick it up very well. And I have seen the reference layer mode before. I just never knew what it meant. I thought it literally meant this is your layer you're using as your reference image, so maybe you can't draw on it or something, I don't know. But finding out this is what it's for, this has changed everything for me. This line art is from a piece I did a while ago, and it depicts my FNAF original character. He's called Anomaly. And if you're wondering, yes, it works perfectly. You still have to go in and do some manual colouring, but it's such a time saver even then. This TikTok has just, I seriously, thank you, just thank you. And it even works with clipping mask. So I can make another layer on top and clip that to the layer below as a clipping mask. And I can still colour within those lines using the colour drop and still have it act as a clipping mask. Oh my god. I am so happy to have found this one. This is such a time saver. If you didn't know this and you use Procreate, then do this method, because holy crap. 100% recommend, 110% recommend.
Does your sketch always looks godly awesome, but your line art always sucks?
I don't usually have that
Then
issue,
don't
but I know a
waste
lot
your
of
time
people do.
doing an awful line art.
Okay.
Instead, clean your sketch. If you clean it well
Okay.
enough, it will look so pretty.
That actually does look really nice.
Does your sketch
That's something I've never done. I've never done sketch cleaning, but I know a lot of people who do it and they prefer to do it over line art. I could possibly give it a go. I'll do a sketch and then I will do one where I line it in my usual style and I'll do one where I clean it up and we can see which possibly looks better. Now with this hack, I see it more being personal preference than anything else. I have always done line art throughout my whole art career. I have never been one to do the cleaning up your sketch thing. So trying out this method is completely new to me. But I do see people that do cleaning up your sketch rather than doing the line art, and I love the aesthetic of it. I always think it looks really nice. So what I decided to do here was I did a really quick sketch of Springtrap because he's just the first character that came to mind. And I duplicated that sketch and I decided on one side I was going to line it in my usual style, and on the other side I would try and do the sketch cleanup method. Now my usual style of line art, it's a somewhat thin brush, so I did go a little thicker here than usual just to match the thickness of the sketch. And I have a stabiliser on it to make sure my lines are nice and smooth. If you are struggling with shaky line art, try and find to see if your program has a stabiliser on it, it's a great help. It basically just slightly lags your line behind your pen, and that sounds bad, but it's actually barely noticeable, and it just really helps to smooth out your lines. Anyways, as I go, I also tend to add line weight variation. Now if you've watched me for a while, you would have heard me mention this a lot of times, but line weight variation is where a lot of people struggle to get their line work looking great. If you add 0 variation in your line weight, that is when your line art is going to look flat and boring. That is when you're going to get this quote unquote bad line art that the TikTok mentions. Now obviously the best way to get line weight variation is to have a tablet that has pressure sensitivity. Of course not everyone has access to this, some people draw in mouses and I don't know how you do that because Jesus Christ. But if you don't have access to pressure sensitivity to do that line weight variation more efficiently, then what I would suggest doing is doing your lines, but as you go, just thickening areas. Just going back over some lines to slightly thicken them. You know, start thin and thicken it out as you go in areas. Especially like you can see here on the bottom of Spring's nose, I've thickened it out because that's a sort of darker area, it's going to have some shadow there. And that way you can still get your line weight variation without having the pressure sensitivity. And honestly, I will shout it from the rooftops until the world ends. When I see people saying that they don't like how their line work turns out, it's usually because they've not really added much line weight variation. And as a result, their line art ends up looking flat and expressionless compared to the more sort of free-handed sketch because they've not added this variation to give it more dimension and depth and boldness in areas. Also, if I sound weird, I think I'm getting a cold, so... So if you want your line art looking as dynamic as your sketch, just try and do line weight variation. It's a really simple thing to do and it can really make your line arts pop. Once I was done with the line art side, I moved on to cleaning up the sketch method. Like I said, this is something I've never done before. I have no idea how to even really approach it. I rewatched a TikTok a few times, tried to see how they did it. It would mostly seem to be just sort of erasing the rougher areas and then just using your brush to clean it up. Honestly, I didn't really enjoy this method. I felt it a bit tedious and I felt like no matter what I did, it still just looked really rough. It still just looked like a rough sketch. And this is why I said at the start that I think this really comes down to personal preference. I could see where a sketch cleanup can be applicable when you're doing more of a painting than an illustration. Sketch cleaning up is something I just do not do. And so I tried it, I tried to give it a fair chance, I just personally didn't enjoy it. I felt like it still looked rough, I felt like the lines were still too thick. Maybe if I sketched it out in a thinner brush it would have been fine. I really don't know. So I do have to disagree with the TikTok here when they said that line art is bad, you should clean up your sketch. I don't think there's any case of what you should be doing here. I don't think it's a case of you have to do line art or you have to do clean sketching. It's a case of your personal preference. It's a case of what you like to do. It's a case of your art style and what matches best. So yeah, when you see TikToks like this that say, if you want to get better at art, you have to do this, don't pay much attention to them. Of course, there are things you have to learn, like colour theory is quite important. But when it comes down to things like line art versus a sketch, that is just preference, that is just what you prefer. Don't let TikToks like this get you down. So that is all the digital art hacks I have for today. This was quite fun to do. It was fun to scroll through and react to some of these things. And it was fun to test them out and see which ones are good, which ones aren't so good. And like, I have learned something new with that Procreate one. Like, I'm still mind blown. Here is my TikTok if you are interested in following me there. I probably won't really use it. But if you want more of this kind of video where I go on TikTok or other platforms and I look for art hacks and I test them out and see if they work, then do let me know. And if you find an interesting art hack that you'd like me to test on TikTok, feel free to tag me in it. I can save them and I can go through them for another video. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, maybe leave a like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Hit the bell if you want to get notifications for when I next upload, and I will see all of you amazing people in the next video. Bye!